I call the August 21st, 2023 City Council regular meeting and work study session to order. City Clerk Ben Lane, please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor David Ortega.
Present.
Vice Mayor Kathy Littlefield.
Present.
Councilmembers Tammy Caputi.
Here.
Tom Durham.
Here.
Barry Graham.
Here.
Betty Janik.
Here.
And Solange Whitehead.
Here.
City Manager Jim Thompson.
Here.
City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Here.
City Treasurer Sonia Andrews.
Here.
And the clerk is present. Thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. Well, we have returned after a 5.5-week break. Our City Council meetings include the security, and we have Scottsdale Police Detective Dustin Patrick, as well as Sergeant Sean Ryan, and also firefighter Brandon Rawlings, if anyone needs assistance. Let's begin with the pledge. I'll call on Solange Whitehead.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we hope everyone had a wonderful summer, and we did get some rain today, so that does put our minds at ease, and children are back in school, which is also an exciting time of the year. I will remind everyone that August is Drowning Prevention Month, and although the month is ending soon, it's important to focus on the pool safety. This August, over 200 people participated in our free Learn to Swim lessons at Scottsdale Aquatics, thanks in part to the USA Swimming Youth Learn and Swim grant. At this time, I want to call our attention to the deepening sorrow and due to the loss of the city of Lahaina and the grieving families in Maui for their deepest pain and loss of life. Scottsdale and Lahaina have several things in common. The family of Hartley, Ruth Barker, were original settlers there in Maui, and you may know them as well for the Hartley and Ruth Baker Boys and Girls Club here in Scottsdale. They also sponsored the Boys and Girls Club there in Lahaina, which was destroyed. So let's take time and pause in silence. Thank you. Next, I will call on the city manager, Jim Thompson, to provide the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's already started, so we got the Fast Five video this evening for you all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Public Affairs Specialist Stephanie Hirata with 5 fast things happening around the city you need to know. Starting us off at number 5, learn about upcoming development projects by subscribing to the P&Z Link e-newsletter. Scottsdale's Planning and Development Services Department produces this weekly publication to keep residents and merchants informed about upcoming projects that may affect their neighborhoods. Subscribe at scottsdaleaz.gov, search P&Z Link. Coming in at number 4, honor those in uniform by nominating them for the Scottsdale Salutes program. In November, the city will publicly thank veterans and military service members in the community by featuring them on light pole banners in Old Town. Veterans, active duty service members, and members of the National Guard and Reserves who live in Scottsdale or are from Scottsdale are eligible for recognition. Submit nominations at scottsdaleaz.gov. Search Scottsdale Salutes by Friday, September 22nd. Next up at number 3, Scottsdale extends hours at day relief centers. With the Valley experiencing one of the hottest summers in history, Scottsdale's Human Services and police departments have partnered up to extend hours at day relief centers to provide those who need respite with a cool place to rest, meals and water, showers, and navigation for additional services. Extended hours will run through the end of September. Learn more at scottsdaleaz.gov and search Day Relief Centers. At number 2, we're asking you to speak up, Scottsdale. Residents are invited to be part of a new online community designed to foster continuous, meaningful conversation among residents, businesses, and the city. Part of Scottsdale's implementation of the Collaboration and Engagement chapter of the voter-approved Scottsdale General Plan 2035. The city partnered with Scottsdale-based research and design firm Atom Innovation to create Speak Up Scottsdale, a hosted online platform that allows participants to contribute their insights, opinions, and feedback about city initiatives, local issues, civic matters, and services. To join this new community of civic contribution, visit speakupscottsdale.com. Wrapping things up at number 1, Scottsdale residents reduced water use during the hottest month on record. While temperatures soared in July, water use dropped by 7% compared to July 2022, saving nearly 180 million gallons of water. The city's popular grass removal rebate saw a 450% increase in program execution leading up to July. Customers removed 400,000 square feet of grass in 1 year, equivalent to 7 football fields. You can learn more about our water-saving rebates at scottsdaleaz.gov. Search rebates. And that's Scottsdale's Fast 5 for August. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. So, during tonight's meeting, there is a possibility that the council may make a motion to recess into executive session to obtain legal advice on any applicable item on the agenda. If authorized by the council, the executive session will be held immediately and will not be open to the public. The public meeting would resume following the executive session. Secondly, per our council rules of procedure, citizens attending city council meetings shall observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the council and city staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from the audience, such as applause, stamping of feet, whistles, boos, yells, and/or other demonstrations shall not be permitted. Violation of these rules could result in removal from the meeting by security staff. This allows our meetings to move swiftly and to stay on city business in a timely manner. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Public comment is reserved for Scottsdale citizens, Scottsdale business owners, and/or Scottsdale property owners to comment on non-agendized items that are within the council's jurisdiction. Advocacy for or against a candidate or ballot measure during a council meeting is not allowed pursuant to state law and is therefore not deemed to be within the council's jurisdiction. No official council action can be taken on these items, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes to address the council. If you wish to speak on a non-agendized item, please see the city clerk. I'm referring to the clerk. I see none. Therefore, I open and close the public comment portion of our meeting. Next, we move on to review of the minutes. I would request a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of June 20th, 2023, the executive session minutes of June 20th, 2023, special meeting minutes of June 27th, 2023, executive session minutes of June 27th, 2023, and regular meeting minutes of June 27th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And we have a second from Councilwoman Whitehead. Please record your vote. Thank you. We are unanimous. Next, we have consent agenda items 1 through 8. As shown, we have the backup file information, and we are also open to having any public comment on consent agenda items. Again, looking for any cards from the public. I see none. Therefore, I would close public comment on consent agenda items 1 through 8. However, as we move forward, I do want to speak positively regarding item number 4, which is the new Thompson Peak Dog Park. We are proceeding with this item is agendized to move forward with a designated consultant professional to see that that job tracks well and that we can get this done in a timely manner. Very important project, and it's part of the bond 2019. The other item that I would also speak favorably for has to do with the conservation of our water resources and an agreement with the City of Tucson and certainly our City of Scottsdale. As you know, we're upstream from Tucson, and Tucson relies entirely on CAP water through the Central Arizona Project. So this program essentially would be a interjurisdictional agreement whereby we could store water and in Tucson and for Tucson as use, and then at a time be able to draw out CAP upstream water that would have gone to Tucson. So it's like a water bank, but having 2 ATMs, right? One at the end of the bank, the water bank, where they put it in an aquifer. So this is very favorable, and it's an important agreement among jurisdictions. I see Vice Mayor Littlefield and Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 1 from the consent agenda, move it to the regular agenda, please.
Okay. And in particular, just for anybody's information, this is the open space construction services item for the Scottsdale Stadium. Anyone else want to pull an item? Okay. Or have a question regarding any of the consent agenda items? At this point, we have items 2 through 8 that remain on the consent agenda.
No, Mayor.
Excuse me? Go ahead.
I had a couple questions on item 2 as well.
Okay. So would you
That's-
like some answer right now? And
I guess we can just pull it.
okay.
Yeah.
Item 1 and 2 would be brought forward with a full, as a regular presentation. Accordingly, I see Councilwoman Whitehead. What do you have?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to kind of bring up to everybody's attention item number 5, and I see our Human Services staff here. I just want to thank the city for recognizing this need and finding a funding source. So I remember in March 2020, when we were hit with COVID, we knew that our disabled populations and some of those who have the least amount of mobility would be hit the hardest by this, and the city has been trying really hard to make sure that those people are not isolated. And so item 5 is yet another resource to reach and help those people. And as you know, as a volunteer at the Granite Reef Senior Center, even when we had a 1 month off of the brown bag program, I heard from so many people that said they had not left their house the entire month of July. It was heartbreaking. So this is such a need. I'm so pleased, and I'm just always pleased with our Human Services staff recognizing where the needs are, finding the funding, and getting the job done. So thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I would move for approval of consent agenda items 3 through 8.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, one more comment. Why don't we just pull item 5? That could raise awareness of the program
Well,
and,
she didn't ask to pull it.
okay.
But you can
I was
comment on
I was just offering that, so, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve consent agenda items 3 through 8. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, Vice Mayor. Please record your vote. Unanimous. So thank you very much. We will now go to a regular agenda, in particular items 1 and 2. Presenting is our city engineer, Ms. Timku.
Hello. Is this working? Okay. Hi, good evening. Allison Timku, City Engineer, Mayor, members of Council. The item before you is the Construction Manager at Risk Construction Phase Services for the Scottsdale Stadium Phase 2 improvements and Bond Project 15 Build 200 space parking lot off of 75th Street. So this is awarding the contract in the amount of $2.2 million between the city and Auckland Construction, and this is for Phase 1 of the improvements to the stadium. So I think there was some question regarding the title of the contract. So we are delivering 2 projects together with this contract, with the overall contract, but we'll be doing it phased with several GMPs. So this is GMP 1. So although the contract title does say build 200 space parking lot off 75th Street, the bond project, that's actually coming up in phase 2, or it will be a future GMP 2. So GMP 1 shows on this exhibit, this is the work that's scheduled for this council authorization, and we will be constructing the work in the first base plaza, as well as doing some improvements to the third base concession area. This is scheduled to be constructed prior to spring training of 2024. And then next year, we'll be bringing GMP 2 to you, which will include the 75th Street parking lot, which is the Bond 2019 project. And it will also include the left field berm and the third base plaza improvements. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Sure. So I will call on Vice Mayor Littlefield and then Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for your presentation. I was just concerned that because there were 2 separate locations, 2 separate bond questions that were being combined into this project, and when I read the options and staff recommendations for the recommended approach, it did not mention 75th Street on that. And so I just wanted to ensure that money that has been voted on by our citizens for that 75th Street parking lot is not going to be used for anything other than that parking lot.
Vice Mayor Littlefield, that's correct. The bond project funds will only go towards the bond project, which is the 75th Street parking lot.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilwoman Janik, then Councilmember Durham.
Just for clarification, the Phase 1 project was not a bond project?
The stadium project, Councilwoman Janik, the stadium portion of the project is not a bond project.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
the parking lot.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Durham and then Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. The parking lot, is it, I think you showed it was like behind center field of the stadium in that sort of brownish area? I mean, the map doesn't identify 75th Street, so I'm just trying to figure out where it is. Is it up there?
That's correct. 75th Street runs north-south there, and it sort of dead ends into that area.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Allison, thank you for the presentation. That lot right now, it is used. What's the purpose of it right now?
Councilmember Graham, it is an existing parking area.
Who uses it?
I believe it's used probably by the court and the police.
Are they expecting, they're going to continue using it after this, I'm sure, right?
Correct.
Okay. When do you expect to come back and to do that parking lot? I guess phase 2 of this project.
Councilmember Graham, that portion of the project, GMP2, we're anticipating to bring that to you next year, early in the year, because we anticipate to start construction on Phase 2, which includes, again, the third base berm, as well as this parking lot, after spring training.
We're going to do it after spring? Okay.
Yes.
So you said early next year is
Yeah,
the
GMP.
calendar year, right?
Yep, early next calendar year, so that we can start sometime after spring training is complete. So it's done prior to spring training of 2025.
Okay. Is there going to be like interconnectivity to the stadium? I guess walkways? I guess there already kind of is a path back there, right?
Councilmember Graham, yes, there is an entrance back there.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. And just for clarification, okay, so GMP, guaranteed maximum price, is really the way we work in the ever-changing market to get, rather than the old school way, which is a lump sum bid. A lump sum bid meant the owner had certain specs, drawings were produced, 8 or 10 months later, you open a bid and then you get surprised or not. And this allows the design as well as going through the process as well as engineering to all be compatible as they move forward. Also, projects can be bid in in divisions of work. So you're not bidding all the landscaping at the beginning of a job. You're able to do it in the order of construction. I think it's a very efficient way. That's also the way we did where we authorized the dog park to proceed that way as well. So with that, do I have a motion to approve this item number 1?
So moved.
What we're going to do is read out the full title, which would be Construction Manager at Risk. Yes, will you do that, please, just to be sure?
Adopt resolution number 12897, authorizing construction manager at risk contract number 2023-125-COS with Oakland Construction Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $2,248,522 to provide Phase 2 construction services for the Scottsdale Stadium Phase 2 improvements and bond 2019 Project 15, build 200 space parking lot off 75th Street project.
Second.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, please record your vote. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to the second agenda item, which is item number 2, job order contracts for citywide pool construction and a resolution regarding our numerous pools and citywide contracts. Will you make the presentation, Mr. Timku?
Yes, Allison Timku, City Engineer. Thank you. Okay, item 2 is job order contracts for citywide pool construction. This is authorizing contract 2023-121 COS with Shasta and 2023-122 COS with Sun Eagle Corporation for initial 2-year term in the amount not to exceed $15 million per contract for the citywide pool construction projects. So this is, we had an existing job order contract that is expiring actually, I think in 2 days. So we awarded it back in 2018. It was a 5-year contract. It's set up just how all of our JOC contracts are set up. So we come forward initially with a 2-year term with the option to renew for 3 additional years. So that contract is currently expiring. It was with one contractor. It was with Shasta. Because it's expiring, we went out and solicited, we had to resolicit again for a new job order contract. We do the qualification-based selection process. It's required of us of Title 34 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. And we selected 2 contractors this time. We selected Shasta and Sun Eagle Construction. And with that, we have two contractors that we're able to negotiate individual job orders for our pool-related construction. The initial term, again, will be for 2 years, and then at the end of 2 years, we come back to you every year for the renewal of up to 3 additional one-year terms. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Councilwoman Janik and Councilmember Graham and Councilwoman Whitehead. Councilwoman Janik.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, it's per job order. Do we have an estimate? Unless I'm misinterpreting this, what if we think there's going to be 2 job orders, but there's 5 job orders? Or is that pretty much locked into the 2-year time interval?
Okay, Councilmember Janik, so the way it works is each contract is for 2 years. So the one with Shasta is for 2 years, and the one with Sun Eagle is for 2 years, and then obviously we'd come back to you for renewals. So within that 2 years, we identify projects that are needed at our pools. And when we identify a project, we have a scope of work, we negotiate with the job order contractor, we negotiate with one or the other on a price, and then once we've negotiated the price, we agree upon the scope and the price, we issue an individual work order or a job order for them to do that work. So the contract limits come into play, whereas one individual job order cannot exceed $3 million, and then the aggregate of the 2 years can't exceed $15 million. For example, Shasta has been under contract with us for the last 5 years, and last year their annual amount that we contracted with them was $2.3 million, and the year before was $1.2 million.
Okay, thank you. Very good explanation. Thanks.
Councilmember Graham, Councilwoman Whitehead.
Thank you, Mayor. Allison, thank you for the presentation. So I sent my questions to you email late, and you got them back to me. I really appreciate that. I'll just go through them, just kind of talk about them for the public. But yeah, I was curious about, can you explain a little bit, this is a job order contract, so I kind of think of that as like, we're going to authorize this for projects that we don't know we'll need, but that you're saying, no, we know the scope and work and all that we will need. Is that right?
Councilmember Graham, that's correct. So I don't specifically know which projects are coming up that we would be using this contract for this year, but our aquatics maintenance supervisor has a list of projects that need to be completed, and he brings them forward to us with the scope, and we get with the contractor to negotiate each individual job order. So we know a few coming up, and then there'll be some over the years that kind of pop up that we don't know about.
So it covers both kind of planned projects and the unplanned, right?
Councilmember Graham, that's correct.
But I guess if you're doing good routine, repairs and maintenance, you're minimizing, catastrophic capital costs, right?
That's correct.
What kind of projects, you mentioned in the email some are going to be capitalized. Do you know what kind of projects that are going to be subject to capitalization? So
a lot of the projects that we do are subject to capitalization, but some of if we're doing more repair work, then that's when we're using operating for that.
No, I understand that, but do you have some examples in this work order?
Oh, okay, so for example, the Chaparral Pool expansion that we just did.
Yeah.
We expanded, we added 8 lanes to that project. Right. We put in some Olympic-style diving blocks and some covered bleachers for viewing, so that type of a project would be capitalized.
But that was completed, right?
That was completed, yes.
So why?
And I'll show you that in my update tonight.
Oh, that's right, because we do have that coming. So, and I do have some questions about that. It looks great.
Okay.
The pictures look great, by the way. But why are we authorizing spending for a pool that we've just finished updating?
Councilmember Graham, we're not authorizing. This was a project that we just completed. I was giving you an example of one.
Of one in the
Yes.
past. That was part of that. Okay.
Yes.
But I was asking for examples of. You said that you've already looked at.
Councilmember Graham, examples of projects that we do under this job order contract is we do replacements of filters, we do replacements of pumps. We went back a few years ago and replaced all of our gas chlorine at our pools with on-site chlorine generation. So those are examples of projects that we do. We've also done diving board replacements, things of that nature.
Yeah, I was just, because you mentioned, because it was $15 million. It seemed like a lot. I was wondering kind of like what inflation was doing to our pool cost. And I asked you how much we spent on this type of thing in the last 2 years, and you said that we spent about $1 to $2 million each year. And this is $15 million for 2 years. So are you expecting like a big backlog of projects?
Councilmember Graham, not in particular that we're expecting a backlog, but yes, obviously inflation has played a part in that. And many of our JOC contracts, we have been coming back to you for increase in the limits because of situations that arise.
But you can't name, though, any reason why I would go from like $1 million or $2 million a year to $15 million over 2 years?
Councilmember Graham, no, that would be $7.5 million a year, and that's pretty typical with our other job order contracts.
Okay. How many bids did you expect? You got 2 bids. Is that about how many? I mean, are there any more vendors out there that can do this?
Councilmember Graham, we didn't receive bids because it's a qualifications-based
sorry.
selection. That's
Yes.
okay. So we go out and the contractors don't give us prices, they give us their qualifications and we select them based on that. We did receive submittals from 2 contractors, the 2 that we selected. And incidentally, back in 2018, when we solicited this project, we also had 2 contractors, and they were also Shasta and Sun Eagle. And at that time, we weren't sure how much this contract was going to be needed because it was the first time we had done it.
Right.
So we only went with 1 contractor back then, and this time we chose to select both contractors.
Was there a problem in the last term by having only 1 contractor that made you rethink selecting one?
Councilmember Graham, no, there wasn't a problem last time, but we do find that it's better when we have, most of our job order contracts have more than 1 contractor on it. It gives us flexibility if 1 contractor is too busy. And although we're not allowed to price shop between our 2 contractors, I think when contractors know that another contractor has the same contract, you know, they sharpen their pencils a little bit more with their bids.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what do you do if they both are, you know, I need, you kind of answered this in the question, but and I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to absorb it yet. But if they can both do the project, how do you decide at that moment which one you grant it to?
Councilmember Graham, it would really kind of depend on the scope of work. Shasta is a pool contractor, and Sun Eagle is actually a general contractor, and they have experience in pool construction as well. They bring to the table maybe being able to do some more ancillary site work, whereas Shasta doesn't have that capability in-house, so they would have to subcontract it.
And then you
So
said,
that we would make the
Yeah.
decision based on that criteria.
and then you said you can't price shop, but if you get that they both say, hey, we can do it, I can do it for $1 million, I can do it for 1.2, you have to ignore that?
Yes, we have to go to 1 JOC and negotiate the price with them.
And so in that case, you'd look at other factors?
Councilmember Graham, yeah, so if we can't negotiate with them, we can move on to the next JOC contractor. But again, we'd have to accept that price, and if not, we have to go out to bid.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Whitehead, Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and thank you, Councilman Graham. So good questions. I was wondering about the price shopping, but I agree, having 2, there's a sense of competition, and so that probably does help. You know, and I also just wanted to comment just on pools in general. I'm the proud owner of a pool, as many of us are, and I would say at least 1 night a month is date night rebuilding the pool vac. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that, but they don't use good plastic, so we rebuild it all the time. The other thing is that my pool service, which I have, no longer will charge me a set rate per month because chlorine has doubled in the last year. So that is an issue, but has nothing to do with my questions. These are just thoughts that came to my mind. I had a question about the installation of the on-site chlorine generation systems. Are those, where are we, I think there was plans to do that for Cactus. Do we have those? And maybe that's a Nick question. Do we have those at all the pools?
Yes, Councilmember Whitehead, we did complete the conversion of all of our pools.
Okay.
Back under the last contract. Those were some of the first projects we did under that previous JOC contract.
And I just want to point out that that is huge because it's a cost savings, but it also is a public safety issue. And not only that, also my kid was a lifeguard. I think Councilwoman Caputti's kid is a lifeguard. It's a safety issue for those lifeguards, having them not have to deal with that very toxic substance. So I'm glad to hear that that's done. So thanks, that's it for me.
Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a little bit confused by the wording of this because it says that there are going to be 2 contracts, one with Shasta and one with Sun Eagle, with a maximum contract price. These read different from what's in the contract, because what you've got on the screen says 15 million per contract, and we've got 2 contracts, so that would read like it's a total of 30, but I'm looking at the actual resolution, and it does not have the per contract language in there. But it does say that there's a maximum contract price, and when you've got 2 contracts, someone could read that to mean it's $30 million.
So, Councilmember Durham, it is, each contract has the initial not to exceed limit of $15 million. Each contract for 2 years.
So we are talking about potential $30 million.
Yes.
But obviously that's not going to be spent unless the needs are there.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that we've been talking about $15 million when I think it's really 30, but.
And
really,
Councilmember Durham, just to note as well, each individual job order is limited to $3 million.
Right. Yes. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, our city uses standard JOC contracts for electrical contractors, for asphalt, mechanical, and plumbing, and they are considerable. Also, the advantages, they tend to be on more a will call basis, which is very good for our urgent needs. With that, I would move to adopt Resolution 12887, authorizing job order contract 2023-121, City of Scottsdale with Shasta Industries, Inc., and contract 2023-122, City of Scottsdale with Sun Eagle Corporation for an initial 2-year term in amount not to exceed $15 million per contract for citywide pool construction projects.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second by Ms. Janik. Councilwoman Janik, please record your vote. Unanimous. Thank you very much. With that, we have concluded our consent and regular agenda items. We have a second opportunity for public comment. Public comment is reserved for Scottsdale citizens, Scottsdale business owners, and/or Scottsdale property owners to comment on non-agendized items that are within the council's jurisdiction. As I look over to the clerk, there is no request from the public for public comment. Therefore, I will open and close public comment. We'll move on to item number 9, which is citizen petitions. Per our charter, any citizen may petition and register with the clerk an item to be submitted or considered, but I see that there is none. Therefore, I will close the item number 9, which is the citizen petition. At this point, we will move on to the work study session. The work study session is an opportunity for us to have a less formal setting for the mayor and council to discuss specific topics with each other and city staff and provide staff an opportunity to receive direction from the council. It is also an opportunity for the public to provide input on the agendized work study item, and by doing so, they would have to come forward and register with the clerk. We would allow 5 speakers, and they would have 3 minutes each, specifically on the subject. Seeing none, no one has registered to speak on public comment for the work study. Therefore, I will close work study item. Next, we will go to the actual work study topic, which is the Financial and Capital Improvement Plan. That is a CIP, an update, as well as a preliminary fiscal year FY 2023. Our presenters will be Sonia Andrews, our city treasurer, and Allison Timkew, the city engineer. Please proceed, Treasurer Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight's presentation is a report on our preliminary year-end results for fiscal year 23. Next slide. Our fiscal year end is June 30th. We are still in the process of adjusting our year-end books and preparing for our audit. And our audit is expected to go on through the end of October, and we hope to present to the audit committee our audited financials in November, and then in December we will present the final audited financials to council. Next slide. For the preliminary results that I'm presenting tonight, we will focus on the general fund, as the general fund is our primary operating fund. So for fiscal year 23, we continued to see very strong revenue growth. Our general fund operating revenues increased 9.6% from the prior year and was 10.4% over what we budgeted. Sales tax revenues is driven pretty much by our sales tax revenues, which was 9.7% increase from the prior year and 17.2% over budget. And I will get into more of why we were that much over budget and what these increases mean. Fees and charges were 3.6% increase from prior year and 13.2% over budget. The reason for these strong numbers is there's three things. One is the Super Bowl and our successful event season. Next is the pandemic spending that continued through fiscal year 23, coupled with inflation driving up prices. Our budget did not anticipate that the pandemic spending spree would continue the entire year, but it did. And the third thing is we had quite a few one-time revenues, which I will go over in more detail as well. So as a result, our sales tax revenue and our general fund revenues were quite a bit higher than last year and also quite a bit over our budget. On the expenditure side, we saw increases in our expenditure because of our labor costs and also inflation. However, we had quite a bit of vacancy savings to absorb those cost increases. Next slide. So this slide full of numbers is our general fund total revenues, preliminary for fiscal year 23. As you can see, the first line is our local sales tax. That is the largest source of revenues in our general fund. And as you can see, the budget was only $170.1 million compared to the preliminary actual for fiscal year 23 of $199.4. And again, our budget anticipated a slowdown in consumer spending in fiscal year 23. We didn't see that, and rather we had more pent-up demand for travel, entertainment, and consumer spending. We also had quite a bit of one-time payment that spiked these sales tax revenues. Namely, we had some audit recoveries, we had some one-time payments like speculative sales and one-time large payments. The next line, state shared revenues, was also quite a bit higher because of the higher sales tax at the state level and also higher income tax collections because of the timing of income tax payments to the state and also the income taxes generated from the pandemic stimulus. The state shared numbers you see here do not yet reflect the reductions to come with the state flat tax. So it is important to keep in mind that the revenues that you see here is a spike in our revenues due to these factors that we just discussed, and we do not expect these revenue numbers in the future years. For charges for services, which is the third line down, we also had a favorable variance because of primarily Westworld, the event fees there. Next slide. So diving into our sales tax revenues,
Excuse me, I think we'll just go back one slide.
Yes.
Because we were running ahead,
can we go back one slide?
and it'll still show the, there. So we jumped to that one when you were still discussing the general fund revenues.
Can we go back one slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more from
One
here.
more. One slide, please.
So she's
Yes, thank you.
concluding this part of her, and now we're going to the more actuals or local. Correct? So at this point, you're going to go to the next slide. Is that right?
Yes, so this is the slide that shows our total general fund revenues, and I wanted to dive further into the sales tax revenues with the next slide. Okay? So
Yes. The-
next,
Fine, and there are two slides, so it was jumping ahead two. We'll be fine going ahead one. Show the next slide, and we're
Okay.
caught up. They had advanced this slide to the next one when you just started. That's why
Okay.
it did not relate.
Okay,
So we're
gotcha.
okay. We're on the correct slide that goes with your narrative right now.
okay, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question on the last slide. Okay, so this slide shows the major categories of our sales tax. These 4 categories are our largest categories of sales tax, retail being the largest one. And as you can see, the gray bars is prior year numbers, the blue bar is current year numbers, and the orange bars is what we budgeted. And as you can see, last year we still had a spending spree, and this year we had the continued spending spree plus the inflation. And so it was exceeding prior year and exceeding our budget. Other taxables are also quite a bit higher. Rental, we had a few one-time taxable speculative sales of apartment complexes and also an increase in rental rates. So because of those one-time taxable speculative sales, our rental revenues was quite a bit above budget. Automotive is pretty flat. Next slide. This slide shows the next 4 categories of our sales tax revenue. Dining and entertainment was significantly more favorable based on the super season that we had and the continued pent-up travel and consumer spending. Construction was significantly higher than last year and budget due to a specialty payments from specialty contractors, new projects, and also one-time audit payments from speculative sales. And hotel motels were also quite a bit higher due to one-time audit payments and hotels doing better than expected. Food stores were relatively flat. So kind of summarizing, next slide. Kind of summarizing our sales tax, as I mentioned, retail, dining, entertainment, construction, those kind of drove the sales tax numbers, and it is really important to keep in mind that it was also driven not only by increase in consumer spending, inflation, but a lot of one-time payments that we received. So I wanted to make sure we are aware of those one-time payments, and also several categories that we continue to monitor because they are relatively flat and or showing negative trends are the major department stores, automotive sales, and food stores. Okay, next slide. On the expenditure side, for our general fund expenditures, personnel services came in under budget primarily because of the vacancy savings that we have. Commodities, we also did an extra 10 million, the second line, 10 million in extra PSPRS, which is the Public Safety Pension Plan contributions. And then for commodities and contracts, with the new contract renewals and the increase in commodity prices, we were just a little bit over our budget, which was really absorbed by savings from the personnel budgets. Next slide. And to share with you the Super Bowl expenses, we budgeted $7.5 million in Super Bowl expenses, and we came in at $5.4 million. Primarily because we had savings in police overtime and other expenditures like the entertainment district lighting or things that we purchased for that. We had savings from that. Next slide. And for Westworld, we had budgeted our revenues, we had budgeted 5.8 million primarily because we didn't budget the parking revenues. So when the parking revenues came in, we were actually at 7.6 million in terms of operating revenues. We budgeted 8.5 million in operating expenses for Westworld and came in right at 8.5 million. So our net after debt service is a net negative income of 4.5 million. And last slide. On the Bond 2019 projects, we've issued 132.7 million of the 319 million to date, and we have spent 42.5 million as of the end of June on the Bond 2019 projects. And with that, I can answer any questions before we turn it over to Allison.
Councilwoman Caputi and
Thank you.
Councilmember Graham.
Just really quick, one-time audit payment, is that what it sounds like? You went back and audited a contractor and they hadn't paid enough sales tax? Or is that what that is?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Caputi, our tax department performs audits of businesses, contractors, and different vendors for compliance with remitting and collecting sales tax. And this year, our sales tax audit recoveries were just significantly higher than previous years.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. That kind of makes me curious. I mean, how many people, can you share with us how many people are in the audit department, sales tax audit department? Like, how many auditors do you have?
Mayor, Councilmember Graham, we have 4 or 5 auditors, and they focus on different areas for tax audit. We also have the state Department of Revenue also have auditors,
Right.
but they audit statewide, businesses that cover multiple cities.
Thank you. When I was looking at this, I was just kind of struck. It didn't really hit me as much when we were going through the budget, but like our budget, slide 5, page 5, not that we have to go page by page, but
Page 5.
yeah, just the retail sales, the decrease from the prelim to the final budget. Can you say just a little more about that, just that drop from the blue to the orange bar?
Do you have a specific category for all categories?
Just the big one, really, retail.
The retail?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean the drop?
Well, the revision, I should say.
Oh, okay.
Downward
so,
revision.
It's actually not a downward revision. The orange bar is what we had budgeted as what we anticipate collecting in sales tax revenues from retail. The blue bar is what we actually collected.
Okay.
So when we put the budget together, so the gray bar is what we collected last year in fiscal year 22. When we put the budget together in April and council approved the budget in May, we had anticipated a slowdown in consumer spending. Back when we put the budget together, there was a lot of prediction of a recession coming, and also a slowdown in spending, as in fiscal year 22, there was a spike in revenues due to pent-up demand and a lot of consumer spending. So we budgeted we anticipated lower sales tax revenues than last year.
So when it says prelim, that means actual, but it hasn't been audited, right?
Correct.
Okay. Some people might see that as preliminary budget. When I see prelim, I think of preliminary budget. But that's an actual pre-audit.
Correct. It's preliminary actual.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the, can we go to Westworld, slide 10? Okay, that question also answers, that answer also answers my question on this one, so thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we go to Councilmember Durham and then Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to lose this rental income, and when is that going to be, in 2 years?
The residential rental tax?
Yeah, do we have a breakdown of how much? It's on page 5, there's the bars for the rental tax. Do we have a
Yes.
breakdown of how much of that we're going to lose?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Durham. Starting in January of 2025, with the passing of our governor signing the Senate bill, the residential rental tax will no longer be collected. We will, in total for the city, we will lose about 14 million. For the general fund, we will lose about 10 million of this 25 million. The rental category includes commercial rentals as well as residential rentals. So this 25 million is a combination of commercial rentals and residential rentals. The residential rental portion is about 10 million. And what we are doing right now is still very preliminary. We are working with the AZ League, the League of Cities, to see if there's any proposal to the state to provide some replacement revenues. We're also working with the city manager's office and our own departments to figure out what we can do to make budget adjustments to accommodate for the loss in revenues. So there is going to be more to come.
Okay. I thought you said something about losing 14 million, or is it 10 million?
It is 14 million in total citywide because we also collect transportation sales tax that we will lose revenues there as well. The transportation sales tax is in our transportation fund. We also collect preserve sales tax, and we will lose some money from the residential rental tax loss in that area as well. So 14 million in total for the whole city, of which 10 million is coming out of the general fund, will be revenue loss from the general fund.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Janik and then Councilwoman Whitehead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just attention on page 10, and I just wanted to make sure that I called attention to the fact that you estimated a loss of $6.4 million on Westworld, and it was $4.5 million, and you attributed that to collection of parking fees?
That is correct. Councilmember Janik, when we put the budget together, we did not include a budget for the parking contracts. And so we had negotiated higher parking fees. So I think we did not include anything there, not knowing what to put in there. But we have, now have better parking contracts in place. So that's the reason why the budget was only 5.8 million and the actual was 7.6.
Okay, and then I just wanted to point out that our city manager was very instrumental in that negotiation to increase the parking fees. And it was a tough negotiation, but he hung in there. So thank you, appreciate that. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Janik, and we were all very supportive of new revenue sources. So basically, I want to talk about that rental sales tax loss. When we collect sales tax, it's broken up into preserve, transportation, and general fund. And so the 4 million will be a loss to our preserve dollar revenue and transportation. So we have less money to pave roads. Do the short-term rental operators, they currently pay a rental tax too?
Yes.
So this tax cut is benefiting our short-term rental operators as well?
Mayor, Councilmember Whitehead, the rental tax reduction is on long-term 30-day or more rentals. So the short-term rentals will still have to pay the tax.
Okay, I'm glad to have that spelled out for me. Thank you.
Well, two things are happening. So our own auditor in auditing was able to recover $8 million. Well, they also probably caught them for not paying state sales tax or county sales tax. And that's 3 times what ours is. So that would mean a recovery that the state is receiving maybe $24 million. Under other normal situations, we recover about $2 million through the auditing process. So a lot of things were falling through the cracks. The other thing I will call our attention to is slide number 4. Once again, we're looking at a prediction of our local sales tax of almost $200 million. It's $199. By the time we add another year to this, when the depletion or the stripping away of the rental tax occurs, that's 5% of our budget. And that's very considerable. That cuts deep into our, even if I want to say, you know, our bond rating and our ability to pay for basic services. The $10 million equates to 100 employees. And that these will be at the League's state convention and will be representing some some resolutions, which I believe all the cities and towns will accept, that will call on our state legislature to restore the state revenue, the funds through state revenue share. Now, if you look at state revenue share on that same slide, it's very predictable. They will, the variance was, 0.2%, but the problem is they're digging into us for 10 million or 14 total on sales tax, and we need to get a restoration of that amount. That's hurting Mesa, I believe, over $20 million, and City of Phoenix, $70 million. And, that's a lot of employees that would be impacted, as well as our ability to pay down our public service debts there on the pension fund. With that, we will then conclude and move on to the CIP portion, or the update with our city engineer, Allison Timcube. Now, the Romans built a lot of things in the old days, right? The Romans built aqueducts, bridges, streets, and everything. Do you think they had a similar process of kind of estimating it, or did they just conquer as they went? I mean, how we really are systems driven here. So you're giving us an update on where we're at, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Good evening again, Allison Timcue, City Engineer. This is the CIP quarterly update for the fourth quarter of 22-23. Again, this update is meant to be just a real high-level snapshot of where we are on some of our projects. For context, Capital Project Management Department, we manage over 175 projects, so we have a lot of projects going on at once. We are making a lot of progress on our projects, but that's sometimes kind of hard to show in this snapshot. So, can you advance it? I'm not able to advance it. Okay, thanks. So the way I've formatted this presentation is, first I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bond 2019 projects, and then I'll cover a project, CIP non-bond project that's in design, and then some CIP projects, non-bond projects that are under construction. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so again, this is the fourth quarter fiscal year 22-23. It's a little confusing because we're in 23-24 now, but this is the fourth quarter update. So this still shows the fiscal year 22-23 projects that were active, and this is just a summary of those projects within question 1. We actually, since your last update, have completed an additional project that's shown in yellow. It'll also be listed with other completed projects later in the presentation. I'm going to highlight the splash pad project, which is project number 2, as well as the 55 build a 17-acre at Asher Hills Drive. Next slide, please. Okay, so this shows project number 2, add splash pad and improve walkways at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. This is a bond project that is intended to improve McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park to implement the park's master plan and to boost attendance and revenue in the summer with a splash pad. So this project is being constructed with the new roundhouse project, which was formerly referred to as the bunkhouse replacement project. We have plans at 90%. Our construction manager at risk is updating pricing for the project. We intend to bring a GMP later this year, GMP 1. We will be doing more than one GMP. We're planning currently to do an early material procurement for some of the long lead items, including masonry and some steel and electrical items. And then we're planning to start construction this winter with a 12-month construction period. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of what the design is intended to look like. Next slide. And then this specifically shows the bond portion of the project, which is the splash pad. Next slide. Okay, 55, build a 17-acre park at Asher Hills Drive. I know you've seen this project before. We're going to be constructing open turf play areas, shaded playground, restrooms, lighted sports courts, basketball and pickleball, walking paths and trails, and then a lighting parking lot. And currently, we are planning to start the native plant salvage later this summer. The design is at 100%. We did do some minor modifications to the design. The bridge, we had to upgrade for utility trucks to be able to drive over it for maintenance of the park. We did eliminate some of the underground storage and converted it to detention basin for cost savings. And then we did look at the roof structure that I know we talked about with council previously. And the proposed roof structure is going to have the same look, but we're looking at using more inexpensive materials to construct that. And then we anticipate our construction GMP later this winter and a 12-month construction schedule. Next slide, please. Again, that's the view of the site plan with the parking lot and to the south, and then the open walking trails to the north. Next slide, please. And then this, again, is an aerial view from the northeast. It shows where the sport courts are, and then you can see the restaurant building and the play area with the structure, the roof structure. Next slide. Again, this is, again, the roof structure that we had previously talked about, and then that's the bridge that we had to modify the design for trucks to be able to access for maintenance to the park. And next slide. Okay, so this is question 2. These are the projects that are active within 22-23 for question 2. For the first project, 1, replace aging infrastructure and improve public event spaces on the Civic Center Plaza. That project is complete. Our contractor is working on punch list items. It's open, and a grand reopening is scheduled to be held in October. We touched on project number 15, which is build the 200-space parking lot off of 75th Street. We talked about that earlier in the agenda. That will be built with the stadium Phase 2 project. And then I'm going to highlight the project number 23, repair lakes and irrigation at Vista del Camino Park in the Indian Bend Wash. Next slide. Okay, so this project is basically repairing the failing lakes and irrigation from McKellips Road to Thomas Road. We are currently under construction at the El Dorado Park area. The lake dredging is complete. We're working on landscape conversion, and many of the trees have already been planted and the DG is being installed. Next slide. And then this was when the contractor was dredging the lake. That kind of showed the setup and the temporary construction area that they were using for that operation of the lake behind the El Dorado pool and the Boys and Girls Club area. Next slide. And then this shows the overall project. So this project is going to come with several GMPs. We've brought one and two to you so far, and that's basically on the left side, the purplish color, and then the red and the green, that's the area that we're currently working in. And then the brown area would be a future phase, as well as the yellow area to the end, and then the final would be the blue area, which is labeled 6 on here. Next slide. 57 is install solar systems at the North Corp campus, and then this project was delivered with a non-bond CIP project, which was our North Corp Yard garage. That garage is complete and in use. All the solar panels are up and the wiring is being completed. We will not be able to activate it until November because the electrical equipment was a long lead item, but once we get it, we will be activating it and bringing it into our system in December of 2023. Next slide. So this just shows the up ramp to the upper level of the garage that was constructed, with the solar panels on top of the shade structures. Next slide. And then again, this is just another bird's eye view on the top of the deck that shows all the solar panels that were installed. Next slide. Okay, so question 3, again, 2022, 23 projects in question 3. A lot of these projects are IT related. A few, as you can see in yellow, have been completed since the last update, and several are on their way to be completed. We do have the build the fire station near Hayden Road and Loop 101, that number 28, that project's currently in design. Next slide. We have the 2 training facility projects at our Tom Hans facility, the police training facility and the fire training facility, which are both currently under construction with targeted completion at the end of next year. And next slide. And I'm going to highlight 40, which is renovate and expand the Civic Center Jail and Downtown Police Facility to meet demand. This project is going to be improving facilities that were built in 1971 and are no longer appropriate to provide the needs of the facilities down there. Our schematic design is complete. We're proceeding with design development for phase 1. This project will be also delivered in a couple of phases, so more than one GMP. The first phase is going to address the jail remodel and then the 2-story addition. And then the second phase will address the relocation of the prosecutor to the former District 2 station space. So they're doing some trading of space and adding space and renovating space down there. Next slide, please. Okay, again, as I mentioned, this is a list of the completed Bond 2019 projects to date. And in question 1, we've completed a lot of court surfacing and sports lighting. And question 2, several projects at Westworld. And then question 3, again, a lot of the IT-related projects, including the Wi-Fi that was delivered with the Civic Center project.
One quick question, just because you're on this slide. What would you say, you mentioned question 2, Westworld, and those 4 items, what would they ballpark add up to in terms of cost that's been committed? Is it 5, 10?
I'm not sure, Mayor. I think I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't really have a good idea of what a lot of those projects cost. We did have some savings in a few of those projects that we will be bringing to the Bond Oversight Committee at the next meeting to be able to transfer to other projects, and then we'll be bringing that again to City Council following direction from the Bond Oversight Committee.
Good. Well, that's fine, of course, following up. I just wanted to point out that the spectrum of all the costs and approvals from citizens is pretty broad and
Oh, correct.
Westworld very well as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this next slide will cover a non-bond CIP project that's currently in design. Next slide. And this is the Granite Reef Wash Phase 2B. This project just started. It will eventually construct a detention basin in Pima Park, as well as storm drain, channel, and culvert improvements along the Granite Reef Wash from Thomas to McKellips, and the primary purpose of this project is to eliminate the FEMA floodplain along the Granite Reef Wash. So again, we just kicked off design on this project with our engineering services contract. It was awarded at the council meeting on July 10th, and we held our design kickoff meeting this month, and construction is anticipated to begin in 2025. Next slide. And then capital improvement projects under construction, and this is where I get to show you some pictures of projects that are active. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the Pima Road, Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley Road project. This is design the 6-lane major arterial cross-section with landscape median, turn lane, bike lane, sidewalks, and curb from Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley Road. The work is continuing with the installation of the sound wall. So if you've driven up on Pima Road, I'm sure you've noticed. So this is an aerial view of that sound wall construction occurring. West half drainage components are also in progress. And during this construction operation, there are 2 lanes of traffic open in each direction on Pima Road. Project again is expected to be complete in summer of 2024. Next slide, please. And then this shows some of the construction of that sound wall. Next slide. And another view of the progress of that sound wall on the west side. Next slide. Okay, this project, Miller Road, Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley Road project. This is the bridge project that's going over the Rawhide Wash. This construction bid award was authorized by City Council back in June. The notice to proceed was issued in July. The contractor has started the native tree salvage and removals, which I know you're aware of, and the target completion is summer of 2024. So this shows, again, just the rendering of what the bridge is intended to look like when it's complete. Next slide. And then this, again, shows the extents from Pinnacle Peak Road north to just south of Happy Valley Road, and that area crossing the Rawhide Wash is where the bridge is. So as construction progresses on this project, I will provide more updates and bring you more photos. Next slide. Okay, this is actually a water line that's under construction. It's Scottsdale Road water line, Gold Dust Avenue to Shea Boulevard. I thought I would show this one since it's at a busy intersection at Scottsdale and Shea, and we're replacing 6-inch ACP water asbestos cement pipe, water pipe with ductile iron pipe to prevent future failures of that line. And we just began work on this project using one of our JOC contractors. It began July 31st, and it's scheduled to be completed in late October. And the majority of this construction work is being done at night to provide minimal disruption to the businesses and the traveling public, because as you know, that's a really busy intersection. So if you drive by, that's what we're doing at that location.
Thank you.
slide.
Let's ask a quick question. Councilwoman Whitehead.
I was just asked about what's going on Scottsdale Road. Is it, so Gold Dust to Shea is not very much distance, but there's construction elsewhere in that corridor?
So it's primarily between Gold Dust and Shea, but we also have a lot of the service meters to replace as well.
Service meters?
The meters to the businesses, the service lines, I'm sorry, besides the main, it's also.
Okay, so is there, and I haven't driven it, is there a limited travel lanes from where to where on Scottsdale Road?
Yes, from just south of Gold Dust to just north of Shea, and then there are some minor restrictions as well, east-west on Scottsdale Road to accommodate the construction tie-ins.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you said October?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, next slide, please. That just shows another picture of the traffic control setup for that project. Next slide. And then this project we talked about earlier as well. This project is complete. It's the Chaparral Pool renovation project. We renovated the existing main pool to accommodate increase in swim area and lanes, and the pool has been reopened. It was expanded to a 16-lap pool, including the USA swimming competition lanes and the Olympic grade starting blocks. We added the shaded area for viewing of swim competitions, and then also a commercial aeration system to cool the pool during high summer temperatures. Next slide. And this shows the completed configuration of the pool with swimmers enjoying it. Next slide. And again, this is a picture at night showing the completed pool. Next slide. And with that, any questions or comments?
At this point, Councilwoman Janik, then Vice Mayor Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Allison. Very comprehensive. Appreciate it. Couple comments. I appreciate the fact that with Ashler Hills, you were able to decrease some of the expenses. So thank you for that. The other thing is that I was at the dedication of Chaparral Pool. Anybody who was involved in that, a million thank yous. It is beautiful. And hopefully our citizens and the kids will use it, and we will be just ecstatic that we have that for our community to use. So thanks a bunch on that.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wanted to say thank you also very much for the Chaparral Pool completion. That's been wanted very much as our swimming competitions continue to grow in Scottsdale and throughout the valley, and I think you've done a wonderful job with it. It looks beautiful. Thank you.
Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Allison, good presentation. Just a few very brief questions. I guess we can go back to slide 20. Or, I'm sorry, 22. Okay, I changed my mind again, 21. The community, I mean, this is not, normally north would be up, but north is to the right here. There's a community right there. I don't even know the name of the community, but you take 74th Way to get there. And they were, I heard some concerns about this park becoming a pickleball mecca and regional tournaments and all that. I mean, that's basically like there's a little bit of concern it's going to be too popular. I mean, do you, any comment on that?
Councilmember Graham, I'd have to defer to somebody in Parks for the actual program of the park itself.
Okay. I don't know if it's, on topic to bring Nick up and say something real quick about it. Sorry, Nick. You probably didn't expect to go to the podium tonight.
Mayor Ortega, members of City Council, Nick Molinari. Asher Hills Neighborhood Park is a neighborhood park, and we will not be programming any activities at that park. So there won't be any tournaments, there won't be any leagues, anything scheduled at that park in terms of the pickleball or any of the other areas. And we don't program activities at any of our neighborhood parks. As we went through the planning process for this park, we did have a group, Las Piedras is actually the name of the community to the north, that was concerned with several things, including light and noise.
And parking.
Parking, we have substantial parking on this site. We probably overparked this site to ensure that there wasn't any overflow parking that came on 74th Way.
Yeah.
So we're not concerned at all with any parking that might disturb the
if I can interrupt, I'm sorry. Their concern about the parking was that if it became that pickleball mecca, they feared that not only would the 70 spots fill up, but then 74th Way would, congest and squeeze them off because they have one egress and ingress to their neighborhood. So It sounds like you feel pretty confident about the status.
Councilmember Graham, yes, we feel pretty good about. We took a substantial amount of time to go through parking and work with that community to address any concerns that they had.
Yeah, I would say this was a very good example of community outreach and dialoguing and incorporating feedback. You guys moved the parking lot away from where it was previous in some previous iteration, and I was very pleased with the accommodations that the city made for the residents' concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for coming up.
You're welcome.
Slide 36. Oh, before we get to 36, sorry, whoever's in charge of slide changing, if we can go to 28 real quick. Oh, wow, they're fast. Whoever's doing that's real fast. Got a fast draw up there. The solar panels, so you said those are activated in October?
Councilmember Graham, in December.
December, okay. What's the payback for solar panels like that as far as what we pay for them? How many years do you expect, the energy savings to pay for themselves?
Councilmember Graham, we actually think that the project is going to qualify for a rebate. And we think that we can see a rebate of up to 30% of the cost, and it could be approximately $1 million. We're working on applying for that rebate right now with the IRS.
Oh, so that's a federal rebate? Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that would reduce our investment by 30%. So with the reduction in our investment by 30%, how long do you think the payback is?
Councilmember Graham, I'm not sure what the payback is on the solar.
Okay.
I can get back to you,
I don't know
though.
if we can look it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll go to, if I may ask us to go to slide 36. There's some really tiny text boxes.
Sorry about that.
I couldn't read them. I mean, and I guess I could zoom in, but then it would only be, is there any way we can talk real quick what those tiny text boxes say?
So it's really just kind of giving the overall intent of the project, which again, like I said, at Pima Road, at the Pima Park, we will be constructing a detention basin there. And there's a series of storm drains, channels, and culvert improvements along Granite Reef Wash from Thomas to McKellips Road to tie into that detention basin. It's an area watershed improvement to get the area out of the FEMA floodplain.
Okay, so is the new drainage route, going to be the red?
The new route, so the blue area that we're looking at right there, do you see the blue on the right?
There's multiple blues. There's a turquoise blue and there's a sort of
Yeah, so the dark blue
okay.
on the right of the slide, it says Thomas Road Storm Drain Basin, Pima Park Detention Basin. So that's basically showing this storm drain area down to the Pima Park Detention Basin.
Okay, and then the water after that, where does it go? I'm sorry.
The water will be retained in the basin.
Okay, so what's the red line? What's the red area mean?
The red area is, okay, that says, it's really hard to read, but it says Pima Road, McKellips Road Storm Drain. So that's a storm drain in that area. And then the light blue, again, is another storm drain. And then the green, my eyes aren't that good, but that as well is a storm drain. So a lot of the things that are on the map are storm drains, and I can absolutely send you a very clear picture of this so you can see it. I apologize, I didn't realize it wasn't going to show that well on this.
No, I just really wanted to understand it and understand what all the coloration meant, so.
And we just started design on this, so again, I can provide further updates as we progress with the design and show you where we are.
Thank you, Allison.
Sure.
Slide 42, I'm moving quickly, I'm almost done, I promise. Whoever's up there is fast. Yeah. How are we on, this looks like it's going to be a really nice project. I guess the slide before that shows kind of the artwork the public art that's going to be part of that, and it's probably going to look nice. Have you got any more feedback or interaction with the residents in the area concerned about kind of the bridge looking over into their backyards?
Councilmember Graham, that has been some of the feedback that we've been receiving from the residents throughout the project. I think that it's been difficult to communicate to the residents what the bridge is actually going to look like and the height of it when it's construction. When it's constructed, I think it's really hard to visualize that it's not kind of going up high in the air, that it's just bridging across the existing wash. So that's been some of the concern from some of the residents, yes. The bridge will bridge.
So you don't think it's going to be as bad as they fear, is what you're saying?
Councilmember Graham, I don't. Like I said, it's bridging, it's following the grade of the existing road. So yes, it's going to be up above the wash, but it's not going to be climbing up above the existing road, which I think some of the people are envisioning.
Yeah, okay. And then the next slide is my last question for the time being, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to ask these questions. This particular project, I guess it was at risk of failing and needs to be replaced. Do you know how old is it? How often do we replace these types of water lines?
Councilmember Graham, I don't know the age of this water line, but it is an existing ACP pipe and asbestos cement pipe, and we have a lot in our system that routinely we have breaks in that type of a pipe, and we go through and replace with ductile iron pipe.
Do you know anybody on staff who might know the answer?
Yes, Brian Biesemeyer.
Mayor, Council, Brian Biesemeyer, Scottsdale Water. Yes, Councilman Graham, we go through an active program to analyze our pipelines and replace them. This one had several failures in the last several years, it's a major intersection. It was a difficult project because of the service lines that had to be done and trying to keep businesses in place, but we thought it was necessary to actually, we accelerated this one in our program to get in there and get it done. But we analyzed these, and most pipelines last 50-plus years. And so we have an active program, and you'll see them on our CIPs to continue to come in and replace these lines as we go through business.
Now you said you accelerated it. Was there a particular concern of yours? What was the judgment behind that?
Yeah, because I showed up to a couple breaks. I'd done one and it was really nasty, and we shut down the traffic on Scottsdale Road and a lot of Shea, and we don't like to do that. So we'd rather go in and make it an inconvenience of one lane now versus many lanes with a lot of water on them.
Can you explain a little more? I didn't quite understand that. You accelerated it because you wanted to just do one lane? Is that what you meant?
We accelerated the timing of this particular one to bring it into this current year. When we went through last year's CIP, we accelerated this one compared to some other projects to ensure we could get this done in a time frame that we'd minimize impact to our customers and the traffic in the area.
I guess what would doing it now versus in a year or two, how would it affect customers in the future any differently?
Only in the fact that we thought we were at risk to some more breaks in the area and putting some of our customers out of water.
Okay, so you've done an assessment and decided that it was at risk, and you accelerated it.
We did a risk assessment of that, and yes, sir, we did.
And then these pipes, you said they're supposed to last 50 years. Is that right?
Generally, most pipelines are designed to last around 50 years.
And do you know what the age of how long this one's lasted?
Based on the area, those pipes were put in the 70s and 80s, so they're 40 or 50 years old.
Okay, so we're pretty good, aren't we? It met its expected useful life.
It has, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, very good. Thank you for a nice haircut, and thanks for coming to talk to us. Mr. Mayor, thank you for those questions, and Allison, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Whitehead, Councilwoman Caputi.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Allison. So yeah, I'm enthusiastic about two splash pads. So the one that just opened in the Civic Center Plaza, and then this one that you've covered. I also want to echo how pleased I am about Chaparral Pool. That pool is located in an area with just a tremendous amount of single-family houses and apartments and it's just a super big residential area. So I'm excited about that. I was going to mention that usually the city photos amaze me and how good they are, but the photos of the solar panels were not as good as how it looks at the North Courtyard. And so since Councilman Graham brought that up, I just want to confirm that those panels will generate 50% of the power for the fire station, police station, North Courtyard, I think is what I was told.
Councilmember Whitehead, yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, and then I just want to point out, because I remember, and maybe nobody else up here remembers, that the solar panels were were highlighted at our retreat because of all the inflation we've dealt with. There was deflation with solar panels, so they came in far less expensive than was budgeted. So that was one of the success stories. But sure, I'd like to have what Councilman Graham asked for. Also want to touch base on Miller Road, since that was brought up. Some of us have been dealing with Miller Road for like 3 years, and I just want to compliment the staff. I mean, it is heartbreaking to have no road and then a road when you live there. There's just no way to make that good. I mean, no road is always better when it's your backyard, but I just want to point out how much staff did, including adding more trees, adding bigger trees, and having residents, I spend time with you, Allison, out there with residents, having residents get to choose the trees, the tree types that they would see, the changing sides on paths, and changing the wall heights to reduce the noise. There was just a tremendous amount that we did to lessen the impact, and every time this project comes up, I think of that. Then recently, we had the neighbors to the south worrying about trees. I worry about trees all the time, and so I appreciated your answers. That did help clarify things to me, that sometimes it's hard to anticipate which trees are going to be moved, and in the case of the grade being very steep, some trees had to come down, but you made it very clear that those would be replaced with like-sized trees. So, yeah, I'll be glad when that project's done. Oh, most importantly, we lowered the speed limit. That was a really big deal for that road. Then I do have kind of some in-depth questions on the work being done at the El Dorado Park, but I think I'll do those offline. Those beautiful little streams and all the tree line, I just want to make sure, and there's a lot of habitat, and I know residents were very worried, and you had I think a conservation biologist on the team to make sure that the habitat around those lakes would still be either replanted or remain. So I'll talk to you offline on those. I think that's all I had. So just again, pretty much what a lot of people said already up here. I agree. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Councilmember Woman Caputi.
Thank you. Allison, I really want to thank you for keeping us updated. There are so many projects, and it's great to have a regular update of where we are on all of the different projects. And then I just want to make a comment that, as you stated, there are hundreds of projects going on in this city, and they are all really large. So having hundreds of really large, multiple millions of dollars of projects takes time. They don't happen overnight. And we sometimes hear noise about people getting anxious that things aren't happening and looking for their pet projects. And I just want to say to the folks who are listening that these things do take time. It doesn't mean that they're not getting built. We can't issue debt all at the same time, nor could we possibly construct all of the projects that we've promised to our residents in 2 seconds. So because they're not happening right this minute does not mean that they're not going to happen. We promise that we will deliver all of the projects that have been prioritized by our residents as we promised. So thank everyone for your patience, and thank you for continuing to keep us updated. We've made great progress so far.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we are concluded with questions. I also want to point out, when Bond 2000 was passed by the voters, I believe it was about $360 million, and this was in the year 2000 when I was in office. Now, think about that, with inflation occurring now to what those costs would be today. What would our city be without the McDowell Aquatic Center? Think about that. The gym over there at El Dorado, Appaloosa Library, the Arabian Library, all of these things were executed, they were approved by the voters, and what would we do without them today? So I'm a firm believer in looking forward at depreciation, as we just had an example with that pipe that's over 50 years old. We can predict it's going to break. We know it's breaking. I got into the basement of this building, And this building will celebrate 55 years. So it opened in 1968. In October, we'll be celebrating a reopening and reintroduction to our city hall. But if you go down to the basement, you'll see equipment that certainly has all been replaced, and it has a green tag on when it went into service. The refrigeration units and other panels and so forth are all there. And in 20 years, they're going to be really old and older. But it is important that using the JOC method makes for reliable contractors that stay hungry, and their suppliers, and they stay available when we have a breakage as well. So I think we're on good footing, and I really enjoyed those questions because they showed how we're able to react quickly as well as manage the long-term construction projects along the way. Well, with that, we are concluded with our work study. I want a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
And a second. Please record your vote. Unanimous. Have a good evening, and we'll be back tomorrow.